Hey y'all, hope you're doing great today. Great last week. What can I say? First race of the season is in the books. Wisconsin Endurance Mountain Bike Series race number 1 at Alpine Valley Resort. Fantastic race, did it last year, but 99% technical single track. There is a little bit of a double track connector in between, which is great for fueling. Um, Laps about 8 miles this year, a little bit less than that. And then it's about 1,000 feet of climbing per lap. So you're at a ski resort, you'd expect climbing, you expect a little bit of NAR. So yeah, all hand-built tracks, trails. Things were washed out this year from all the rain. They had to reroute some of the low stuff because the weather leading up to it was pretty wet. We even got some drizzles the morning of. It wasn't too bad. A couple of little stream crossings, a couple of little pits of mud, but nothing that was going to gum up your drivetrain or anything like that. So that was pretty fortunate. Let's see now. Bike setup. You can look at the previous videos. I'm walking into this one with pretty much the same thing. Tire pressure up front, I was running a Maxxis Recon at about 16 psi. In the rear, Maxxis Aspen with a Cush core running at 17 psi. They felt really good. They were able to contour to the rocks and roots. I had plenty of grip, never slipped out once. And I do love that Aspen for really all conditions. I'm kind of sold on that one. It doesn't gum up with mud. I've raced it wet. This will be the third wet race. Last year was a dry race. Raced it there, and it held pretty well. I don't like it on the front because I think it breaks away too easy, which is why I have that Recon, so I can do a little bit more free flow technical descending, and I like that setup. For nutrition on this one, sustained energy in my bottles, my nutrition bottles, and then one water. Salt separate. I like to carry a couple of gels, and then Hammer Fizz. I like the Cola Fizz. It's tasty, it's delicious. It makes my water a little bit lighter. To set up nutrition, I actually could pit right off of the course. Last year I pitted off to the side a little bit, which took me a few extra seconds to get to it. This time I pulled up right next to the course, put a cooler with my bottles. That way I could pass by, dump bottles, grab new bottles, and go. I color coordinate my bottles. I use these for my nutrition, this for just plain water. That way I know what's in it just by looking at it, and I can grab and go. I don't have to think about anything else. I feel like transitions are something that I kind of dialed in over the years of racing multisport. You will not win in transition, but you can definitely lose, and you can lose a lot of time really quickly. So I tried to keep things on point. And then for my nutrition bottle, the directions are generally to put 2 scoops of sustained in there. I use 4, so I double concentrate it. It's easier to hold more nutrition, and then I can have my bottle of water and nutrition. I know that you shouldn't have too much like hypertonic fluid in your stomach, so I can dilute it out. But it's easier to grab than a gel on the bike. And I really only like to reserve gels for when I need a quick burst of something addition. Like I feel like my mood changes, or I'm feeling like, after a while you just kind of get those subtle symptoms of like maybe my blood sugar is lower than I'd like it. I like the gels for that. I can also tell when I start to need salt, and just kind of get that feeling like you're thirsty but don't want to drink. I think that's usually where I get. Then I need to hammer a couple salt tabs with some water. And the fizz is really good for that as well. But the nutrition I thought was really on point for this race. I've done it in the past kind of like this, and I'm going to continue to do that. One bottle lasts me about 2 laps during this race. Is about where I was, and then a gel kicker. So that was good. Starting out the race, it is more of a mass start. This was a smaller event. I like the WEMS series. They're typically smaller, and they're just kind of set up to race for the sake of racing. If you know what I mean. There's not really anything huge or prestigious about these races. It's just a bunch of people getting together, hanging out, and enjoying what they want to do. So mass start of like 27 people for this event. And as you know, getting the whole shot into single track is really important because once you're in, it's hard to pass. Again, everyone is super polite during these races that I've ever come across. So passing isn't a huge headache, but that can slow you down a fair bit. So coming out the start, I don't like leading in because I feel like it makes me push my pace too much. But I did get in about 4 or 5 in, and passed the first few people relatively quickly within the first couple of miles. There was one individual who did take the lead early and maintained it. I was probably a solid 30 seconds to a minute and a half behind him when I started counting the switchbacks. As you can see in the little quick video of the course, it is really tight in there. So you can see people fairly often, and which is kind of nice. See them count as you're racing. You're like, oh yeah, I'm 30 seconds down. And I don't mind being that far down that early in the race because it comes down to sustaining a pace, right? Like you don't want to come out too hot and then burn out. You also don't want to be too slow and try to catch up. So I was okay with that minute and a half for the first few laps. And racing last year, it was nice because I didn't have to really analyze the course in the first lap. I knew kind of where everything was and about where I was in the course. And then some of the sketchy spots that I came up to last year where I need to watch my descending. There's always a couple of surprises because trails aren't the same and they had been washed out. So it was a lot of learning the course the first lap, which is nice on fresh legs. The other problem is, of course, the heart rate was probably over 170 average that first lap. So I took a hit of fatigue, and my power average was probably a good 30 points above where it was for the rest of the race. Good first lap. Came through. I didn't even pit after the first lap. When you come through, you do the first, it's almost 8 miles, and then there's that section. And because of how technical everything is, it's really hard to get any nutrition in. So that's service road is where I tried to get as much in as I could. Swig of sustained, try to finish half a bottle of that, wash it down with a little water, and then go. I did try drinking on the course, and it does slow me down a fair bit. There was one spot or 2 spots where I could get a little bit, but mostly it was just gutting it in at that point and going forward. So fast forward through lap 2, pretty much the same thing. Things slowed down and settled in. I followed the guy, made sure that I had a gap. Come back through, pitted after the second lap to grab a bottle. I forgot a water bottle at that time, so I just had nutrition, which was unfortunate. And then lap 3, I came through, noticed that he dropped a chain. I came through the switchbacks, passed him, he passed me again. I had a smaller gap at that point. And then coming out of the woods into that double track, I grabbed my bottle and actually dropped it, which I counted out about 30 seconds to swing around, grab the bottle, and get back at it. It was that error that I saw him, a couple hundred yards down, clip up through and get back into the track. So I knew I was down enough to miss him. I'm not sure where he went at that point. If he was ahead, because I didn't see him again for the rest of the race. That was it. So either he had totally boosted off and he had so much of a gap that I wasn't seeing him in the switchbacks, which means it would probably be over 5 minutes, or he pitted and stayed there. And it could have been that he had to do some work on the mechanical or whatnot, but at that time I wasn't sure. So moving into lap 3, fatigue started to really kick in. The biggest weakness I saw this entire time was that my lower core, especially the kind of lumbar back area, was starting to get weak. And I'll circle back to that, but that was probably the most frustrating thing. I could tell that everything else was pretty strong. Upper body, legs, the cardiac fatigue was definitely setting in, but that was kind of the weak spot, and it was getting harder and harder to do quick descents and work through those technical terrains. I really had to focus on maintaining form a lot better. So that's something to work on. Lap 4, 5, and 6, we came in through, and then I just started getting to that point of being ready to be done, especially those last couple laps. So I was like, you know what, this is it. Coming in through lap 6, I was looking at my time and I was like, there's no way I'm going to finish this up and I'm going to get back out. And I was actually okay with that. I was like, yeah, that's the way it is. I know that if I have less than 50 minutes, there is no way. And I thought that was the case, or at least I lied to myself until I came through into that double track and I realized I had basically an hour. So I pitted really quick, grabbed a bottle, and headed out. And that last lap, I went out, and one of the 9-hour guys, actually the winner from the 9-hour, caught me and passed me. And I followed him for a while, I don't know, probably 10 minutes or so, until he hit kind of a more technical climb and kind of slipped out, and then I just passed him on that and just kept going. It was a lot of fun to watch. Great rider. He was on a hardtail and just really crushing it. Definitely out climbing me. I'd catch him on the descents in some of the flatter sections, but he was definitely like a goat, which is probably nice that I could follow him up to the top, where there's mostly climbing as you're getting up, and then it's kind of up and down on the way back. So he was definitely faster getting up that first little bit, and then I think just the terrain worked in my favor there. So free flow to the end and pulled out the total of 7 laps. Looking back, last year I did the same. The course itself came out to be, I think, 3 or 4 miles shorter on those 7 laps than it is this year. Thanks. Anyways, 3 or 4 miles shorter than last year. My average heart rate was higher last year, and the average moving time was lower last year as well. So I consider that I'm coming out, it looks like by the data, probably a little bit stronger. Definitely not where I'd like to be. I think there's a lot of work to do. I still have some weight to lose. I stepped on the scale the morning of the race at 182, which is still a little bit heavy. I'm down at least a solid 12 pounds from my peak of the year, so that's good. But with Leadville, the climbing, it's going to be really important that I shave a few more pounds off. My power average was dismal at 185. That translates to an NP of 236. I guess when I look back at like racing Ironman, my average power was, closer to like 250 for 5 hours. So I know that this is totally not apples to apples comparison. You're either on or off power mountain biking, and there's a lot being generated by pumping through and stuff like that that can't be correlated to a power meter, especially this type of racing. Technical single track stuff. I think I'll see higher numbers on courses where there's a little bit more, where it's less technical. There's better areas that you can just open up power rather than being off or on. So that's yet to be seen. We'll see. We still got some stuff to work on there. Average heart rate was 167, and that put me at a overall moving average of about 8.95 miles an hour. I'm okay with that. Like I said, I'd like to see higher power numbers, but it is what it is. So let's just deal with that. Things to change for coming up. I talked about, first off, the kind of lower back being a little bit tender. I think there's a couple of things. First off, a little while ago I noticed this. I cut out bent over rows from my upper body. I bench rows now, so there's less strain on my back. I feel like with the deadlifts and then having that twice a week on top of everything else was putting too much strain in that area of my body. I also feel like my body mechanics at work could use some adjusting. I think I do bend over a lot more than I'm giving myself credit to, so I think I need to be more mindful of that, just to let that area of my body not get so fatigued and weak. Nutrition was pretty much spot on. I ended up only using, what did I use? 3 out of my 4 nutrition bottles, 2 gels. So I probably could do a little bit more on my calories, but that's okay. I need to carry salts. I did have to stop for salts, which took me time to grab them out of my cooler. So that needs to be addressed. Salts and gels should always be on me. And then I think that's pretty much it for that. It was a good race. I'm happy with the result. You can't argue with ever being able to stand on a podium. That's very exciting to me anyways. I think anyone that ever has, you just, it's something that it's kind of special. So no matter how small the race, it's just nice to be the best on that day in that discipline. So that's really cool, and I appreciate it. Big thanks to sponsors, Hammer Nutrition, Dispatch Bike, keeping my bike looking fly, keeping me moving. I do appreciate them tremendously. And I hope you all have a great week. If you have any questions or I missed something, throw them down in the comments, and I will chat with you later. All right, guys.